Up next is a very special conversation, ladies and gentlemen. We have amongst us someone who has so many titles to her name. I don't know where to start, but I have to say, first and foremost, that she has been leading by example when it comes to actually bringing about a change in her own way. A sustainability champion herself. Gul Panag, ladies and gentlemen, is someone who has actually made a difference. She is, apart from being an actor, she's also an entrepreneur and a sustainability warrior. We have with us also Vikram Chandra, senior journalist and presenter at the India story WION, who will be engaging in that conversation with Gul Panag. A huge round of applause, please, ladies and gentlemen.
Gul, Gul, it's such a pleasure talking to you and getting a chance to once again pick your brains on something that is really important. Sustainability, climate change, making an impact, changing the world. These are all very noble causes. They're very noble things to do. And people like you do try and go out and make an effort to make a change. Talk to us a little bit about how that can actually be done. Is there a responsibility for somebody who's a well-known person, who's a celebrity, to try and make that change? And if there is a responsibility, what's the most effective way of doing it?
I think firstly, Vikram, everyone has a responsibility. Whether they are a quote-unquote celebrity or not, all of us have a shared responsibility towards the world we live in. It's the house that we have. So when you live in a home, you're equally responsible after a certain stage. You can forgive a toddler for not being responsible, but thereafter we all have responsibilities. And the world we live in is our home. So whether somebody is famous, whether they have a platform like the one that you have and I am privileged to have, is secondary. I think all of us have a responsibility and we have to be cognizant of it. I think what you choose to do with that responsibility is deeply personal. Some people take it upon themselves to use the platform available to them to do more, and others do things that are perhaps less visible in the public eye. But I'm of the view that everybody is doing something or the other to shoulder their share of responsibility towards society. Sustainability being one part. But I also think more conversations need to be had about sustainability and what it entails by breaking it down. As you and I were chatting before this, I think we hear the word sustainability a lot, but what is it broken down into? What are the actionables it entails? I think that is the broader conversation one should be having.
And I'm going to spend some time going into that in some detail to try and get action points, because as we end this, as people are watching this, they should walk away saying, okay, this is how we can actually try and make a difference and try and make a change in our own lives and try and communicate that to others. But just from that point of responsibility and trying to make a change, it almost starts to seem that now, in the last few years, given a certain amount of, how do I put it, toxicity on social media and a lot of backlash, and if you say something, 10 people jump down your throat, it's starting to happen to a lot of people who have the ability to make a change, who have the voice to make a change, are choosing to say, why am I getting into it? It's better to just be quiet and stay out of it. Because whatever I say, I'll get trolled.
Absolutely. I think we have encouraged a cancel culture which is making people withhold their ability to be role models. And sometimes the role model you need is perhaps not the role model you like. Sometimes somebody has to say things that are not necessarily acceptable today, but will be required when you look back in hindsight. So I think what effectively cancel culture and social media has done is effectively reduced the ability of people who could rise up to become role models in society. And that goes for everybody. I think that's a casualty which social media has afflicted, and I don't think that's going away anytime soon. But there are still issues that are universal. which don't polarize. I think people have started stepping away from anything which requires taking a position that's polarizing. We are such a polarized society today. It's unbelievable. And I wouldn't call it intolerant.
What is not going to cause polarization?
I don't think climate change can cause
discussing
polarization.
What biryani is nice is polarizing these days. Discussing which Bengali sweet is nice is polarizing. Talking about movies is impossible. And if you start talking about things like the environment, I've started noticing this. A lot of people who used to be climate warriors and other things and are pulling back. And I've asked them sometimes, why aren't you talking about things like this? Why aren't you talking about air pollution? Why aren't you talking about...
Because there's no nuance left. You can no longer take a nuanced position. It is no longer possible to agree with X while disagreeing with Y without making an enemy out of Y. So the nuance in public discourse is all but eliminated because there's so much noise in my way or the highway that the nuance is all gone. And coming back to climate change, I think climate change deniers don't exist anymore. And that is an established fact. So it's universal. Climate change is real. The conversation that is polarizing on the climate change front, however, is the North-South debate. The global North versus the global South. Should the global South be paying the price for the entire havoc that's actually been wreaked by the global North? And is it fair? I think that is a polarizing conversation, but I'm happy to be in favor of the global South there. Should climate change take into account development? Is development possible with climate change? These are conversations that need to be had, Vikram. But the fact that remains, and I'm very proud of the position that our government has taken with respect to how we view SDGs and the kind of cost that it entails on us, and how the global North actually needs to step up to be able to shoulder a larger part of the responsibility because they are part of the problem why we are where we are. And that's polarizing. But beyond that, I don't really see much polarization as far as climate change and sustainability is concerned.
I think the reason why I'm dwelling on this point a little bit is because when people are trying to get others to make a change in their lives, and when they are drawing attention to the problems that we are talking about, right? Plastic waste, conserve water, don't destroy the planet, worry about air pollution. I mean, we all live in the NCR and we know what the impact of that is. I think the reason why people have stopped raising awareness about it is because somebody will immediately come and saying, but you to drive in a car, why are you telling the farmer not to burn stubble? Or you yourself are drinking so much water, whatever it is. Why are you having a bath twice a day or once a week, whatever it is.
It's like
and that's the reason why I think people have started to pull back, and that's wrong because people should be taking a more activist position on this.
I think advocacy shouldn't stop, but because, as you very rightly said, you can no longer be a climate change warrior if you don't condemn stubble burning. But, and again, stubble burning is a complex piece. We've been doing it for generations and generations and generations. It's that during a particular time that we were talking about, the overall levels of air pollution rise so much that the stubble burning, I'm not a stubble burning defender of any kind, but I want to clarify that there was a study that I read.
Before somebody suddenly starts talking about Punjab and who is in power out there.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
the parties you once used to be.
So the challenge is that during that time, the already high pollution levels and the contributing factors that come from stubble burning just send it over the edge. So there are multiple challenges that exist in being able to take a position on anything. Having said that, and that notwithstanding, I think it is possible to find that balance where you say, you know what, I'll give you my personal example. I'm an electric mobility advocate. I'm still an adventure junkie. I do not think the two are mutually exclusive. It is possible to like and enjoy and advocate electric mobility, and it's also possible to be an adventure adrenaline junkie. I don't see how the two are in conflict. Of course, if you if you must go and say, oh, but you take your adventure vehicles to the mountains and those emissions rise up. I mean, there's really no end to it. We can nitpick on everything, and which is what we were talking about earlier.
So the solution, therefore, is to say, yes, I like cars, I love cars, I like going on drives, I like bikes, but I'm doing X, Y, Z in electric mobility, and I'm working on new solutions on power, on electric power,
I think
which is what you are doing.
Which is really I mean, when you come and look at sustainability, what does it actually come down to? It's the air we breathe, it's the water we drink, it's the food we eat. First and foremost. And my experience of walking and traveling with a air quality monitor for about 2 years, all through 18 and 19, established that by and large, apart from these sticky months in NCR, air quality everywhere is bad. Air quality everywhere is bad because we don't seem to value the air that goes into our lungs. We still have a bit of...
It's worse in North India than it is in the South.
It is, of course, because we also have higher particulate matter. It's more dusty, more construction sites, and unregulated construction sites, which, of course, now the NGT has come down very strongly on. But I think the point I'm simply trying to make, Vikram, is that there exists easy actionables that we all can adopt, and it starts with the air we breathe. And in my experience, and I have a picture, the third or the fourth day of the lockdown, I think 26th of March, the AQI in Mumbai was 13, 1-3, just because vehicles went off the roads. That directly, immediately impacts you, the quality of the air you breathe. And that's purely a function of taking vehicles off the road. Now there's again a nuance there. It's not just passenger vehicles, it's commercial vehicles. It's easy to regulate passenger vehicles, bring about a scrapping policy, and move in that direction. But the bulk of the pollution, which a study in Delhi also indicated, is coming from commercial vehicles and construction sites. And not really from passenger vehicles. It contributes a very small amount, but it does contribute. And if we are able to find cleaner solutions and have vehicles with lower and no emissions, be it electric mobility for passenger vehicles or green hydrogen for bigger long haul trucks, emissions is the first port of call because it's what we breathe, and we can't continue to keep breathing toxic air.
So let's now translate this into action points, right? What can people as individuals do? The normal reaction is to say, you're talking about climate change. What can I as an individual do? This is something for governments to do. Even a country can't do anything by itself. What can I as an individual do? What would be the answer to that question? And let's try and break it down into specific things. One is, of course, to do what you did, become an entrepreneur and start investing in companies or directly trying to find solutions. That's one. The second is to say, I'm going to personally practice a certain amount of abstinence or, recycle and be careful about what I'm doing. What would be the other specific action points?
I think if one can hit pause at every decision of consumption and think whether you really need to make that, and that consumption includes consumption of fuel when you drive, consumption of clothes that you buy, all consumption. If one can just simply hit pause and say, do I need to do this? I was on a very interesting discussion 3 days ago with a fashion activist who is a climate activist, climate warrior, a UN Goodwill ambassador. And somebody asked her, what is sustainable fashion? She says, sustainable fashion is already in your wardrobe. The fact that you already have what you have is the sustainable choice. So if you have a choice between what's hanging in your wardrobe and buying something new, hanging in a wardrobe is the answer. But that again comes at odds with those people who make their living out of selling you clothes. So the circular economy and how that needs to be integrated in terms of recycling, upcycling, is where we need to focus a little bit without eating livelihoods.
And there are only a few areas which are very clearly bad, like plastics, the overuse of plastic. Don't use polythene bags.
I think those are easy to fix problems.
And that's something which everyone can keep in mind because there are no two ways.
I think all of us have cloth bags. I keep at least 4 cloth bags in my car, in every door pocket, simply because when I go somewhere, I don't want to buy. I mean, now stores are charging you money for brown paper bags or bags that you may buy from them. But things like reducing, okay, if I had to give my actionables, this is what they would be. Obviously, electric mobility, for sure. And there's no, I mean, I don't make a secret about being a very passionate advocate of electric mobility. 2, rainwater harvesting, composting, and as much solar energy generation as possible. I think the kind of policy incentive that the government of India has given, as have various state governments, for solar power generation in your homes. Grid tying remains a challenge, and I would really want to be able to use this platform to advocate ease of grid tying. I should be able to feed back into the grid the power I produce from my rooftop or from the society I live in Bombay. That still remains challenging. Some states have really taken the lead. Punjab, and not right now, just to clarify, Punjab has been running pilots of grid tying for the last 10 years. So nothing, it was already in a very, very good place before the present government took over in education and solar initiatives. So grid tying is something that we could all push for. It's very complex right now, and regulators are not very keen to partake. Distribution companies, discoms, are not interested. These are larger actionables that every family can actively do in their own sphere without having to need support from somebody else. Rainwater harvesting, composting, making sure that you have as much solar generation as possible within your own home.
And there's an interesting aspect to that, because quite often when you are saying be sustainable, it was one of the earlier points that you made, that conserve, don't overuse, switch off the tap, be careful about conserving water. And that's important, of course that's important. But sometimes it's the other things you can do which may have a even bigger impact. Like what you said about rainwater harvesting. Actually, a fair amount of rain falls in India during the monsoon months. And if individuals, if residential welfare associations, if cities, if state governments, if at a national level, we would spend more attention in actually harvesting the rain, we may not have to worry that.
I think it's
that may have a bigger impact. You should do both.
At the risk of interrupting you, I think Maharashtra has been stellar in Bombay specifically. The BMC has been very proactive. They put in place mandatory rainwater harvesting. I think almost 10 years ago, our entire apartment block was dug up because we had to, and I was in the managing committee at the time, we had to institute rainwater harvesting measures. And our own water supply of our particular building is to a very large extent recharged by rainwater. And I want to give another example here. I have another property which is on the outskirts of Pune by a lake. I actually have a meter that measures how much water I'm charging back, because I'm funneling the entire rainwater harvest that I do. And the place that I have is very close to Mulshi Lake. It gets the brunt of the southwest monsoon, perhaps much more than Mumbai. And we actually measure year on year how much water we collect and how much we put back into the bore and how much we pull out. So these are all quantifiable things that actually have an impact.
And there are residential welfare associations, even in a city like Mumbai, which are doing
mandatory. It's mandatory in Bombay.
But in addition to rainwater harvesting, composting and
so garbage separation remains a problem. We are just lazy. We feel it's somebody else's problem. And that stems from how we are as a culture. Garbage ko hum touch nahi karenge, wo kisi aur ki samasya hai. How difficult is it to segregate garbage? And in fact, I think a really progressive way of dealing with garbage should be find a way to compost, and we will not take any wet garbage at all. There was a proposal in a bunch of municipal corporations in the country where the decision was that we will not, after a certain time, accept wet garbage. Your disposal of your wet garbage is your problem. Through incinerators, those churning machines that you have in your sink, or through composting, we will only take dry garbage. Because at the end of the day, it's also about the dignity of the person who's disposing your garbage. Yeah. And that's something that we just have not been able to wrap our heads around as a society.
All right, so as we wrap this up, if the tag is no action, no action is not an option, your final message to the people watching this, the action that they can take and the action that they should take.
Affirmative action begins at home. It begins with the practices you adopt in your house, what you teach your children. And if you teach your children, it will have two advantages. One is that you will empower another generation, and two, they will be a constant check on you, because you may slip. But once you've told your child that this is not something we don't litter, or we save water, or we put off the lights, or we work towards rainwater harvesting, these are concepts children understand. They will make sure you adhere to them. So passing on the message and constantly talking about it at every opportunity with your children is the one message I would like to leave the viewers with today, because they become a natural check on our ability to deviate from the path.
Is your 5-year-old already telling you when you're going wrong?
He's a plogger. I just learned about this term like 2 weeks ago. I said, what do you want to do this weekend? I want to go plogging. It's apparently picking up garbage from places. You go with a plastic bag. And I said, blogging, I know. But what is plogging? So he takes a little bag and he puts on gloves and he says, let's go plogging. And the idea is just to go pick up whatever garbage he sees.
Well, if a 5-year-old is doing that, it means that there is a lot of reason for hoping that the mission sustainability will actually eventually work out. Gul Panag, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Vikram. Thank you very much for having me.
Vlogging is one catchphrase that we are all going back with tonight. I have to say, I have learned the meaning of this term tonight as well.
The school has taught that he's brought it from the school. I had no idea what it was.
Well, no better way to conclude this grand evening. Thank you very much, Gul Panag, for sharing that insightful journey, also inspiring us in multiple ways through the work that you do and through those words tonight. Thank you very much. Hashtag no action, not an option is the message that we are sending out. And Gul Panag is a living example of what we truly believe in. Thank you very much for gracing our occasion with also the tidbits that you've shared on how we can actually inculcate those practices to lead the way and ensure a greener, cleaner future for our generations to come. And that is a very strong message that we're going back with. Thank you very much. A round of applause, please, ladies and gentlemen, for those words.